What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Also hit the like button. And in this video, what I'm going to go over is basically starter motors 101. Hopefully this video will help you guys out, whether you have a residential mower or a commercial mower. Most of you guys know I work mostly on residential and commercial John Deere mowers, but regardless of the brand or whether it's a commercial mower or a residential mower, I think this video will be pretty helpful for you. So what I'm going to cover is basically some common issues that I see with starter motors. And just real quick, I want to thank all my new subscribers, and I especially want to thank Shelter Mutts. He's going to be sponsoring this video. I was answering some of his questions on another video that I made. Next thing I know, I got a very generous super thanks from him. So he is sponsoring today's video. So first, let me show you the proper operation of a starter. That gear comes up. You see that little gear? It goes up and spins. So it comes up, engages the flywheel, spins the motor over to start the engine. And if you have proper fuel and ignition, the engine will start. This is also assuming all your switches are working properly and you have proper compression. So guys, there's many reasons why your mower may not be starting. And in this video, we're just going to go over mostly the starter issues. So if you're turning the key and your engine is rotating, it's the spinning, it's probably your starter is working. So your starter's not the issue. I've got many other videos already posted covering ignition issues, fuel issues. So check those out. But if you're turning the key and nothing's happening, or you may be hearing a couple of noises that we're going to go over in this video, chances are it may be the starter, but I may be able to save you some money by checking these other parts first. First thing we're going to check is the connection of the battery. We're going to check then the status of the battery. And then on a lot of residential mowers, the solenoid is not attached to the starter. So it's a separate component, and it's a lot cheaper than a starter, obviously. And then on commercial mowers, the starter is built onto the solenoid's built onto the starter. So if you're turning the key and nothing's happening, first thing I want you guys to check is your battery connection. Make sure they're clean and make sure they're tight. I can't tell you how many times people have come in and it's just been loose connections causing the issue. So right here we got a loose positive, and also that ground wire needs to be just as tight. Now let's say you have an issue where your positive is loose, like on this one, but the ground is tight. You need to, before you go putting a tool onto that positive connection, you need to disconnect the ground. Then you will tighten up the positive, then tighten up the ground. Now, many people think you can just hook up a multimeter like this and test the battery. That's only going to test the volts. If you're needing to test the amps, you need to get a tool like this that actually will put a load on that battery and test for the amps. So the cold cranking amp. So I'm going to look here, it's rated for 340. So I'm going to set this tool to 340. And it's going to put a load on it, and it's going to tell me the cold cranking amps. And in this case, that battery is actually really good. Now guys, I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive on this multimeter and how to test a battery situation. I've never seen a good accurate way to test the cold cranking amps with just a multimeter. So let me show you real quick what we got here. So here's my multimeter. And I'm going to reset it here. I'm going to put it on 12 volts DC, and this battery that I just recently took out of my Toyota 4Runner, I replaced it, and I'm going to show you why. Now this multimeter, now a lot of people will test a battery, they'll think this battery is good. So I'm going to put my positive here. Again, I got it set on 12 volts DC. I'm going to show you something here. It's showing 12.78 volts. Now, that's good. as far as volts. What matters are, when you go to use a battery, is the amps. All right, that's the amount of flow of energy going through it. And unless you have a way to accurately measure exactly how much draw you're putting on it, I don't see how you can measure cold cranking amps with just a multimeter. What you need to get is a tool such as this one. I got this one at Harbor Freight years ago. It's great. And what it does is it actually puts a load on the battery. So I'm going to show you why I replaced this battery recently. So I'm going to put the connectors on here, turn it on. Okay. So one other thing to consider when you're looking at a battery, we have cold cranking amps, that's amps at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and we also have cranking amps at 32. So right now the temperature outside here is probably about 85 degrees. So this battery should do 935. So I'm going to set this to 935. And this meter was only, I want to say this was only about like 20-25 bucks. Of course, with inflation, this is probably going to run you probably 50 bucks now. So now it's putting a load on the battery. And as you can see here, out of 935, we only have 577. Now, even if we were at 0 degrees right now, we still don't have nearly 750. We only have 577 cold cranking amps. And batteries nowadays only last about 3 to 5 years. Right now it's May 2023. This was 9/19. So I knew this battery was kind of getting, as far as age, about time to replace. So before it gave me any trouble, I went ahead and put a new battery in. All right, guys, let's say you've got the battery is good, your connections are good, everything is good. Still nothing. Next up, check your fuse. Okay, before you go buying a starter, check there's a 20 amp, maybe sometimes a 30 amp fuse. I'm going to show you where they are. On the residential mower, it's usually right in front of the battery. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come in, whether it be a residential or commercial mower, and the customer already spent the money putting a battery or starter on it, and all it was a simple fuse. So the battery is the most common issue that I see. Then the second most common issue that I see is this little fuse right here. It's a 20 amp fuse right there. And in this case, the fuse is good. You can see that little wire in there. It's not broken. It's not burnt up. You're turning the key, nothing's happening. We've confirmed our battery's good, our fuse is good. So next up is the solenoid. So on residential mowers, a lot of time the solenoid is not connected to the starter. So the purpose of this solenoid is to take power from the battery and send it over to the starter. Before we jump the solenoid, make sure that PTO switch is off. Take your transmission, put it in neutral. Make sure the belt is disconnected from the clutch, because if you bypass this solenoid, that clutch will turn. Make sure your e-brake is on. So again, positive power right here is always going to that solenoid, and we're going to jump it with a screwdriver right here. Again, make sure it's going to send power right over here to the starter. Again, make sure your PTO switch is off, and you'll need the key in the on position. Now, when you turn that key, it sends power. Again, I'm pointing out that you need to have the e-brake on and all that good stuff, because it's going to send power. It's going to crank up regardless, or it's going to turn over the motor regardless. So I'm going to kind of just bump it here. It's hard to do while I'm holding it with one hand. It's easier to do it with two hands. Sometimes it's better to use two screwdrivers. And we're going to send power directly to this starter. So when I connect these two posts and that starter works and the engine starts up, the starter is good, and that lets us know that the solenoid is bad. The solenoid right here, easy to replace, about 30 bucks, so that tells us the starter's good. And just to show you guys real quick, I hooked up a test light right here to the positive post on the starter, just to show you that it only gets power through the solenoid. We've replaced the solenoid, it's good now, and it's only going to send power to that starter when the key is in the start position. And this is assuming that your brake switch and your seat safety switch are working properly. Now guys, I don't recommend that you jump that solenoid like I showed you. I just wanted to demonstrate how it works. Now a lot of times what you'll do is you might hear a clicking noise if it's a bad solenoid. And what you can do is hook up that test light like I did to that positive post on that starter. And if you're turning the key and you're hearing a clicking noise, but that your test light is not getting any power, then you know it's the solenoid. If it is getting power and the starter motor is not engaging, not doing anything, you know the starter has gone bad. Sometimes it won't make a noise. You'll hear the solenoid click. If your test light is getting power, your starter's probably bad. Now let me show you real quick two other noises you'll hear with a bad starter. So this mower here, I know it's got a good battery. I want you to hear the noise it makes. Listen closely. That spinning noise, I'm going to show you what's going on with this starter. So this is that exact starter I just showed you. The gear is not going to come up and engage the flywheel. It's only going to spin. So it's only doing one of the two functions. It's only spinning. And next up, I want to show you when the gear comes up but doesn't spin. I want you to hear the loud clunking noise it makes. Listen closely. Alright, so let me remove this starter and show you what's going on. I'm going to send power to it, and you'll see the gear only comes up but does not spin. So that loud clunking noise is that gear coming up. Like I mentioned before, we're going to show you the commercial mower. I already showed you the residential starters that have the solenoid separate. This starter has the solenoid built onto the starter. Now here's the fuse, the 20 amp fuse that you want to check. That's the location there. And then there's also another fuse here that you also want to make sure is good. Now the jumper wire, the wire that sends the power over to the solenoid, is right in here. There's usually it's like a purple or bluish wire, and I'm going to cut away, there it is right there. I'm going to cut away this little zip tie so I can show you guys a better, get to it better so it's easier to pull off, and then I'm going to put a test light on it. And this is where you would want to put your test light to see if your starter is getting power. So this is that wire here. This one's blue. Usually it's like blue or purple on the commercial mowers, on the John Deeres. So I'm going to hook up a test light. Now this cable here is always hot, so that's why that boot needs to be over that bolt all the time. So right here I got the test light on that jumper wire, the one I just pulled off of that little tab there that I showed you. And I'm going to show you as I turn the key switch on that it's getting power when I go to engage the starter. Alright guys, so that's going to conclude this video. First thing, let's recap. First, you're going to check your battery. You're going to check the connections and the status of that battery. Alright, next you're going to check that fuse. Make sure it's good. And sometimes I've had it where the fuse terminals are loose. So make sure you're getting good connection in those fuse terminals. It feels nice and good. You can spray WD-40 in there. WD-40 is safe for all this stuff. WD stands for water displacement. 40 stands for the 40th formula that worked. for what they were wanting to do. And next thing, if you have a residential mower and its solenoid is not connected to the starter, what you want to do not jump the solenoid. Like I said, I was just doing that to show you guys how it works. And if you did do that, you really need to make some safety precautions, because that engine is going to start turning over and the blades could engage and all that good stuff. So the way you want to test that safely is put a test light onto the positive post on that starter, and if you're turning the key and it's getting light and the starter's not working, that means you got a bad starter. If it's not, then you probably have a bad solenoid, or you need to also double check and make sure that your seat safety switch, e-brake switch, and all that is working properly. And also it could be your ignition switch. You could have a bad ignition switch. And I will tell you, it is very rare that I see the residential mower starters go out, or it's an ignition switch. Those two are actually more common on those commercial mowers, all right? And then you saw where I was checking the jumper wire to go into the solenoid on that commercial mower. You can put your test light on that to see if you're getting power to the starter. And I also showed you those common noises that I'll hear. A lot of times I'll jump on one. If it's not starting, I'll hear that buzzing noise, that gear spinning. So that gear is not going up and engaging the flywheel. It's just sitting there spinning. And that loud clunking noise where the gear is coming up, but it is not spinning at all. So guys, I want to take a moment to again thank my subscribers. If you haven't already, hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button. That really helps me out. And I'm hoping these videos help you guys out, helps you save some money. And also, one thing I've been thinking about is I get a lot of comments where people ask me, they'll ask me, hey, I'm having an issue with this or that. Feel free to leave a comment that gives me good ideas of what topics I should cover next. I'm trying to cover the most common issues first, and then we'll take a little bit deeper dive into some of the more or less rare issues, but more technical issues. And those videos, I know they don't get as many views, the ones I do a deep dive into technical stuff, but I'm trying to get more of the common things covered. Now, I did have an idea that one way that you guys could help sponsor me, help me make more videos, and also help you guys out is I've started a Patreon. I have 0 patrons right now. And one feature on Patreon is that we could do like it's almost like a Zoom, to where people will ask me questions and I'm like, man, I just wish I could see what they're talking about. Well, I'm going to start the Patreon page. I'm going to modify it a little bit better. Go on over there. I'm going to put a link down in the description, and I'm going to have a tier. There's different tiers. I'm not very familiar with Patreon yet. I'm going to get more familiar with it, and I'm going to have probably some more like behind the scenes or more in-depth videos on there, things that I'm not going to really post here on YouTube. But one cool feature that I think we're going to do is for the sponsor type tier, the higher level tier on Patreon, is where we could do like if you have a question on something and you want to ask me, and I can kind of help you, maybe guide you. We can kind of talk one-on-one. We could have like it's almost like a Zoom or a FaceTime or phone call or something, and we can kind of go through it, and I can kind of walk you through it. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. And if you do want to, support the channel, support me, help you bring you this content. I work a 40-hour job. I'm very busy. I have a side business. I do work for about 13 dealerships, and I'm very busy. But I do like making these videos and helping you guys out. It's very satisfying and rewarding, and I love the positive feedback that I get. So if that's something that you're interested in, get on over to Patreon or leave a comment. Say, yeah, man, give me some ideas, give me some feedback. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope this video helps you guys out. And again, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.